Okay, that's good. He's been moving between hands-on coding and managing, working with many small startups in his past 20 years of experience, and as a founding engineer and freelancer. Today, he's working as a full-stack senior developer at Tikal. Today, we'll talk about AI coding, how to level up your flow and security meetup. If you are not familiar with vibe coding, I think that's a good starting point, or you're not being developer, but nevertheless. So without further ado, I do want to invite Avner. So Avner has been a professional developer since 2010. It was a long time ago, so things will change, and he also evolved, and he learned code from very early stage in life. From birth, have you started to developing from birth, Avner, or
No, no,
you know?
not a little after that.
Okay, that's good. He's been moving between hands-on coding and managing, working with many small startups in his past 20 years of experience, and as a founding engineer and freelancer. Today, he's working as a full-stack senior developer at Tikal, a hands-on technology consulting company, helping companies develop their AI products and their AI developer processes. He's living somewhere in Israel. I don't want to explore, but he have two kids, and he loves to play his guitar. So, Avner, without further ado, it's your stage.
So, a little about me. Before we start, I think Lior presented me pretty well, kind of about where I'm coming from. I have to say that because I've managed quite a bit in my career. I'm very interested at the process of development, and also as a developer myself. I know there's a big difference between having a process that I like and having a process where I feel stuck and that I'm not moving. It feels very different, and we all want to be in a place where we feel productive, but also that we are proud and happy of our results and of what we deliver. Um, like everyone, I mean, I can say that I have a lot of experience with all kinds of things. I am no expert with AI. I think very few people are. So I'm trying to kind of go along and learn this stuff as we go. Um, as Lior mentioned, I'm a senior full stack at Tikal. We are a consulting company, a hands-on consulting company, and we kind of put AI as our I guess flagship or target or something like that. Um, and we're all, let's say, all in about the AI revolution, coding with AI, coding AI. And I think very much, I think a lot of us kind of realize that our profession is changing in a lot of ways. And I'm here because it really interests me. And it also, I have to say, intrigues me because it's also scary. It's also a scary thing, and I think the way to deal with that for me is trying to learn about this as much as I can, and just feeling that it's something I'm a part of. So let's talk a little bit about where we are and what am I even referring to when I talk about coding with AI. So basically. Um, we kind of started with AI and it first like hit our lives with stuff like ChatGPT, which are websites, like these chat websites. And a lot of people are coding with that still and did a lot of coding with that still, um, where you enter the website, you chat with the agent, you paste your code or your error message, you get some code back, you take it back to your IDE, whatever you need. After that, we got autocomplete with products like Copilot and Cursor, which just ran in our IDEs and completed our code with easy tabbing. And those slowly kind of evolved into coding agents where they're not just completing in our code, but performing complete tasks for us of editing code, running processes, things like that. Basically, we kind of got a mix here where we took that website chat and we put it into our IDE and we gave it all the tools that our IDE has, all the power. And we'll talk about that a little later on as well. And I think probably the next step is multi-agent workflows and automated agent workflows. We're not really going to go into those today. I think the heavy center of balance today is on coding agents like Cloud Code, Gemini CLI, Codex. The cursor has this kind of built in, and definitely the new versions. So this is what we're seeing as, I guess, the centrally used flow. So I was kind of wondering where we're at. I see that we have quite a few people here already. So we're gonna go with poll number 1, Lior. Okay, so the question is, how do you use AI to code? And you can read the answers here. I ask A stuff in my browser, just like we said, like ChatGPT. I use my IDE through autocomplete. People who usually click tab a lot. Coding agent like Cloud Code, where you give it coding tasks using text prompts. Other system or tool, because really we're at a frontier where there are endless options. And of course I don't, which is a valid option. Just that you don't use AI at all in your workflow. Okay, so I see that we kind of we're balancing out here. We have most of the answers in, and I see that most of you, actually 40%, 47% use a coding agent, giving it coding tasks using text prompts. That's great. And I see that a lot of others are asking stuff in the browser. A little less tabbing, and even a little less people here who don't use AI. 2 people who said they don't use AI. So we can see that the heavy way we're looking at things, I'd say the productive way to use AI agents for coding today is really like we said, it's kind of here. Oh, sorry. With decoding agents like Claude. So I'll kind of try to discuss those as we go along. They'll be the main tool that I'm referencing. So let's talk a little about our direction. Lior kind of mentioned about talk of the name of the talk is leveling up your workflow, and it's a good question of what does it mean, leveling up to what, leveling up to where, and I'll give you my answer for that. It's of course an opinion. There are many ways to do this, but this is the way that I look at it, and what I'm talking about today. So our primary goal is to raise velocity, deliver more value with our time. Generally, it does mean writing more code. I think that generally what AI gives us is the ability to write more code. It's not really a tool that helps us do more with less code. It's just there to write a lot of code and very quickly. And that's basically the promise, okay? That we can not just get a lot of code, but a lot of value also with a lot less investment of time. So the key to velocity, if you be using agents and stuff like that you can see is generally less manual approval. If we have a person in the loop constantly, that just slows down the process. And our problem is that a person needs to be in the loop to make sure the AI is doing its job correctly, securely, rationally, etc. Because if we're just getting a lot of code and it's in very low quality, we're not really getting more value. So what we're going to try to talk about today is putting the agent in a controlled setting, which will, what I wrote here will provide the agent with a GPS and ABS. It will control the steering wheel and gas pedal. So basically, we're trying to kind of basically create this world for the agent where it has very less options to make mistakes, more guidance, and less options to do harmful things. And when you have it like set up, if I go with the car analogy, if you have it set up with a good, let's say, lane system where it can't go outside the guardrails, it can go much faster, right? You can also rely on it to go much faster and intervene less. So I kind of talked about that sort of direction. If we have these two images here, this is doing autocomplete in the IDE with Cursor or what Copilot, whatever. And here we have a product called Vibe Kanban, which is basically a Kanban board. But every time you move a ticket to a new lane, an agent, a pre-configured agent, will pick that task up and do it, and do something about it. Maybe like write a PRD, maybe implement it. But it's a very 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 let's say automated system. I have to say it's kind of experimental. It's not easy to find value in those types of things yet. But let's see how we can move in the right direction. Okay, so a little more specifically about what we'll talk about. First of all, we'll talk about security. How can we use AI coding tools in a secure manner? So AI coding tools, I think we talk about them here because they're a little different than all the AI coding, all the coding tools we already know. They're a little different from how we treat our IDE, and they're a little different from how do we treat all kinds of services. So we're going to talk about how are they different and what can we do. And in the second part, we're going to talk about improving AI coding output, exactly about what I talked about before, getting better output so we can hit the gas pedal. I will be referencing, like I said, I mostly use Cloud Code. I will share my setup a bit soon, but it doesn't really matter. All these agents, if it's Cursor, Gemini, CLI, they have different ways of doing these things, which are almost the same. So we'll start with AI coding agents, and we'll talk about security. So as this picture, I hope presents, we need to take a hard stance. If anyone is unfamiliar, this is Sarah Connor from the Terminator series, who fights all the Terminators. So let's see talk about a little bit, first of all, understanding what an AI coding agent is, a little about its architecture. So I have a very vague diagram here, high-level diagram of the architecture of an agent. First of all, the agent is this some guy. Well, he's not exactly a regular program that you run on your computer that you click on buttons and they do very specific things. It's more like something that can do all kinds of stuff, and you're letting this guy use your laptop. He's working on your laptop. You gave him the password. You gave him all kinds of other things that we'll talk about soon, and he's using your laptop. But he has eyes and fingers to use your laptop, but he doesn't really have a brain. His brain is in the cloud. It's connected to a lot of other things, and that's where he does his thinking. So does all kinds of stuff on your computer, but he does his thinking somewhere else usually. That's basically the architecture. It also kind of looks like that in real life. So Lior, let's do a poll number 2. Okay, so the
Yes, now
question
you
is what,
can.
you got it?
Yes, you can answer the pool. Yes,
Yeah,
great.
terrific. So what can an AI agent running on my computer do? So I just wanna kind of see what everybody says, and everybody's going with one answer. Right. We have one heretic. Okay, so pretty much everyone says all of the above. It's pretty correct. It says here, delete my files, read my environment variables, send the content of my files to remote servers, and also write a lot of code. And yes, it will do all of these things. I have seen it do all of these things when it really wasn't intended. Um, so just moving on to the next slide. What is a coding agent? So basically, a coding agent is a program you run on your computer. I'm sure most of you know this because you write programs. It can access its own memory, CPU, environment variables, files on the disk, network connections, hardware and system devices. Um, basically, we give a lot of credit to it being an AI agent and all the other stuff it does, but first of all, it's a program that you run on your computer. It's built to run bash commands and make network requests and edit files and read them and do it autonomously. And it's also built to everything that it reads, it's built to send it out to the network, to the model. So it's by nature a very unsecure application. Okay, so it is like RM or Git because it's a process that you run on your computer. But it's actually built to do a lot of things that we naturally consider not secure. And it's also built to do them autonomously, which kind of makes the whole thing even more spicy. So basically, that's it. If you want to be secure, do not use a coding agent. Um, and let's see what we can do when we are using a code agent. So first of all, a little before I go into the details, I will say the context as we'll see ahead is always super relevant. Um, it's up to you, but you kind of have a lot of responsibility to um, to understand what is your actual context, security context. Are you on a work computer? Are you running in a VPN? Is the VPN network considered to be secure? What do you have on your computer? Do you have secured sensitive files? Do you keep, I don't know, did you download a JSON file with the customer details and it's sitting in your Git repo, in your folder? So you have to consider all these things just as you regularly would. And of course, also maybe you're running on your own computer and you don't care, and you're building a side project, and none of this matters to you. But let's see. Basically, the common things that we look at, the places that we should start looking at when we're working with the code agent, to make sure we're not missing anything for security. So first thing is the environment. Coding agents have access to the environment. They run in the shell, of course. So basically, that's I'm talking about like the Linux environment variables, process.env. Um, so if you're running from a shell that's logged into AWS, the agent is logged into AWS. I don't know if you have database credentials in your environment, Git credentials, anything that you have, you're basically really kind of like, okay, you're kind of taking your laptop and going to the agent and letting him use it with the shell that you opened. A common pitfall is also .env files in code folders. So we use a lot of them .env files, many of us, and we also have commented credentials for production a lot of time in them. The agent doesn't really follow .git ignore or something like that. It will read all the files. So it's just something that you should look out for. And of course, they are running under the Linux user we're running them under. So basically, if you're running them under your user, they have access to all your files, and they are running inside your network. So that's either like your um, work network, VPN, or whatnot. So things you should consider that the agent is living in this space. So the first thing that we talk about is built-in protections, because I think I'm kind of trying to make the agents here sound like a terrible destroyers, viruses, but like any process that we run on our computer, we give it a certain amount of trust to the developers to not delete our entire hard drive, right? And you're doing this when you run Git, ls, brew, whatever that you run on your computer, Spotify. So we have some trust with the publishers of the agent tools here, and they give us some tools to limit what the agent does. So first of all, there's the limit to the folder that you run them in. If you start Cloud Code in your home folder, it will give you a warning: do not run me in your home folder, run me in a project folder. And we kind of can assume that they will only access those files. It's it's one of the things that the first thing we use. The allowed tools list. So this is an example of what an allowed tool looks like. So we basically need to manage this list. Again, if we go back to the original definition, we don't want to get like request for approval every time the agent needs to run Git status. But we need to understand what we're willing to tolerate and what we're not willing to tolerate. Permission mode, which is also something that the agent runs in always, allow edits or request approval. A domain whitelist, which is also something the agent can be configured for HTTP requests. And generally, these are configuration files which we create for our agents and tools. They should be shared. It's better to share them as they are, they're part of our processes and they're good to be reviewed by others. And it's good for something to, like if I'm committing my Claude settings to Git, my teammate can look at it in my PR and say, oh, okay, this is something that you shouldn't let Claude do on its own. And like I said, we give a certain amount of trust to the publisher here. There are a lot of different behaviors. I've seen this, I don't know, I worked a lot with Cloud Code, which in my experience is very slow to use tools. Sometimes in an even like another tools, like you will ask a lot of permission. And then I used another tool, which is like a warp. Warp is a terminal tool, which I really love. And it also has its own agent. And I used that agent, and I didn't even like have a chance to give it too much permissions, but the defaults were very permissive. And it took my database credentials and it connected to the database and all kinds of nice things, which I didn't think it was going to do, just because I was unfamiliar with Warp and how it is built. So those are our tools, and we should learn to know them because we trust them. We give them a lot of trust, but we should kind of know what we're trusting them to do and what not. And it's a little different for each tool. So moving on to the next thing, we're going to talk about outside protections. We talk about this a lot in the age of AI. AI is generating a lot of code, and we need something, let's say, deterministic, um, closed, like I said, to give it tighter guardrails. And we talk about this everywhere from the importance of types and static checking. And of course, in the security context, this is probably the most important place to look at it, because if there is a hard protection that I can give to the agent I'm running, to the tool I'm running, then I know that I know that I'm safe from certain things. So of course here there's a varied range of things we can do. They all have their costs and the value that they give us in the security context. First is to limit the user and environment the agent is running under. Even like a basic thing as creating a different Linux user or OS user for the agent that you're running, and running it under that user, running it in its subshell with a whitelist of environment variables. Make sure if you're running it under the OS, so you can control its file patterns, its file access. So that's the basic thing. And of course, if it's using any users that you do want to give your agent, and you do want to give your agent some access because it can do a lot with that to AWS or your database, make sure you're giving it restrictive permissions. Then running in containers is also something that we see a lot now, to run more automated agent processes. These things are a little complicated, a little not all very mature, but if you're using, let's say, the Claude as a CLI tool, it's pretty easy actually to get it to take some code, put it in container, and run inside the container, where you know that you get the sandboxing of the container. There are also tools that use OS level sandboxes, like BRAP, things like that. If we go a little outside of that circle, gateways and proxies, LLM gateways, they provide checks on the fly for the actual content you're talking to your LLM with. So they actually can filter for private information, sensitive information, things like that, and also other things determined on your policy. LLM gateways are also great. They're actually, I really recommend them for organizations where there's a lot of LLM usage, because they also allow to consolidate cost and use different models. Um, so they're a good way for that, for specifically that, to check the content that you're sending to the LLM. Okay, keep in mind that this doesn't not mean a custom proxy doesn't mean we're talking about between you and the LLM model, but the agent is still a process running on your computer, and still your computer can make requests to other places. So that's a different kind of network limitation. Another way to limit the ownership of data, or the data, or actually retain full ownership of the data that's going to the LLM or self-hosted LLMs, something that's also very much picking up right now by a lot of our organizations, as a lot of models are available open source to run on our own, under high load. And another way to do this is remote coding AI agent, which I actually like a lot. And I write GitHub Actions here because it's an example of that. You can have your agent running in a GitHub action. For example, if you're using Cloud Code, go to your repo and ask Cloud Code to add the Cloud action, and it's like a preset action that Cloud does. And then just any issue that you have or pull request, you can tag Claude and tell him what to do. And he runs inside the Git action, which has very, very strict access, of course, only to your repo, It doesn't have access to any secrets that you don't give the action specifically. So that's a very, very contained environment. It's not good for everything. It's good for certain type of tasks because it is running fully remote. Um, but it is a way to know that you're getting something which is very limited in the security context. Of course, there are many more solutions. At the end of the day, security, data security, sensitive information, these are usually the concerns of the organization. So I really recommend uh, to ask what are you using and what are the options. For remote environments, I kind of mentioned this a bit before. Coding agents are really good at working on remote environments. AWS databases, kubectl, MCPs to different providers like Datadog, interfacing with Git, which is amazing way to use these guys to debug remote environments, dev, prod, whatever you need. But of course, you need to make sure you're giving them a user and they're going to be operating within the privilege of that user. So follow this privilege, kind of like you do to an intern that kind of just came to your company and he wants to check out the AWS account, but you're not going to give him like the permission to delete your databases. So something like that. MCP servers are also used for that. You got to notice that when you authenticate with an MCP server, you authenticate with a service, with either Datadog or as an example here, but it can be endless amount of services. Uh, so also there you need to notice that you're giving it the, let's say, the right amount of permissions that fits your use case. User responsibility. So this is probably like the main one, the most important one, of course. This is a snippet from the Cloud Code docs website. Cloud Code has only the permissions you granted it. You're responsible for reviewing proposed code and commands for safety before approval. This is on us. I think what's happening in the age of the AI, we're actually getting a lot more responsibility as developers because we have a lot more power, as the cliche goes. Um, and we can generate a lot more code. We can run, if there were things that used to be like, I'm going to write a script that does this and that, and it would take a lot of time to write that, to interface with stuff like AWS CLI that maybe not everyone knows very well. Today, you kind of just think of something and you have the script, and those can delete stuff, DDoS stuff, do a lot of damage. So we have more responsibility to make sure we are treating this generated code and this generated the processes that run autonomously in our computers. We have a bigger responsibility to make sure we run them in a manner that doesn't leave too much room for error, especially not very big hard errors, like deleting our entire MP3 folder that we have been moving from computer to computer for years. Through painful stories.